This is a follow-up video from the first structural unemployment video I created, which considered real-life contextual examples. Within this video, I'm going to be considering solutions. So, just a reminder, structural unemployment occurs when there is a mismatch of skills to available jobs in an area, and there can be for many reasons. So some of the reasons we considered in the other video was deindustrialization, offshoring, and automation. And the reasons they cause structural unemployment is because those jobs have now been made redundant in those areas. So the people previously employed have been replaced by either robots, foreign workers, or more competitive countries. So that now they need to consider either alternative occupations or move where they're still required within that role. So, labour immobility is often a cause of severe issues related to and actually causes a prolonged structural unemployment. So, I'm going to consider two types of labour immobility. I'm going to consider geographical, and I'm going to consider occupational as well within this video. So to begin with, geographical. So this occurs when workers are unable to move from areas of high unemployment to areas with greater job opportunities. This could be due to the fear of moving, it could be due to family commitments, or the financial burden. Now I'm going to delve into the latter and focus on housing and rental costs with regards to the cost of moving. So if we consider average salary and the percentage job growth in certain areas, we can see that London has a much higher average salary and job growth than other areas in the UK. So London's average salary, which was conducted in a study from Deloitte just over a year ago, found that it was roughly £41,111 per annum, which is £12,805 greater than the UK average. And within Yorkshire is much lower, and furthermore Yorkshire has a negative job growth percentage, so therefore this would suggest that London would be a preferable place to work. And again, another major area of the UK is the East Midlands, so which is again much lower in average salary and has a negative job growth percentage, so suggesting that the most productive and desirable jobs are actually in London. A significant percentage of the UK's GDP does derive from London, so again, this is where most jobs will be. So it should be, I suppose, the government should be trying to encourage the unemployed to be accessing the London labour market. But if the, if the UK government is going to try to encourage people to move to London, we really have to consider the financial burden, not just even houses or rental prices, but it's probably worth pointing out the actual cost of moving on that day, and just prior to that can be really expensive. Research conducted by Barclays Bank found that moving itself can cost around £8,885, and that's the estimated average cost. But obviously that does depend on the area, so it's probably going to be more expensive than that in London. And costs can include the removal companies, temporary storage perhaps, redirected mail, new furnishings, but also don't forget the estate agent fees, stamp duty, so the tax on buying that property, surveys, valuations, as well as legal fees. And this cost itself can often prevent people from wanting to move to different areas, never mind the difference in house prices and rental prices as well. So now if we consider house prices and rental, we can really see why some people might not feel like it's possible to move to London. If London has the highest average salary, you'd also expect the city to have the highest average house and rental prices. And in 2019, the government reported that the average house price in London was £463,283, which is £301,154 higher than Yorkshire. And it's also between 266,712 and 273,112 higher than the West and the East Midlands. And that's even with house prices slightly falling in London as well. So those who are unemployed would find it really, really hard to be able to buy in London, especially considering you'd most likely need a 10% deposit for a mortgage. So therefore we need to consider rental instead. So when we consider rental, and we consider central London and surrounding areas, it's really difficult to get rent for lower than £1,500 per month. This then makes it hard to save for that deposit, to get a mortgage in the future, and also often the value for money for that rental price is much lower than in other areas. So some people might be reluctant to move from bigger, much cheaper property in different regions to move to a much smaller and much more expensive property in London, even if there is more available jobs. Now I'm just going to show you a quick video based on the housing problem in the UK.
Level, the UK doesn't have enough houses, and with a growing demand for such short supply, houses get really expensive. The average house in the UK these days is over 200 grand. That's a whopping 173% increase on the average price in the 1990s, and wages haven't kept up, rising only 19%. Houses being so expensive drags rent prices up too. And expensive rent has another knock-on effect of making it really hard to save up to buy a house. So you can see the whole system is working against itself. No wonder 1 in 4 young adults are thought to be living at home with their parents. It's been happening so much, they've been given a name: Boomerang Millennials.
Well, don't forget we're not economic under Conservatives.
There's a trend with broken promises and housing. Take the Conservatives in 2015. Their manifesto promised 200,000 new homes for first-time buyers. These starter homes were aimed at people under 40 who could buy them at a 20% discount. Out of 200,000, how many did they manage?
I don't have the exact numbers for you.
Well, it's easy to remember. It's 0. You built none under that plan.
Okay, that 0 is disputed, but at most it's 16.
So clearly there is a housing issue in the UK, and there needs to be increased supply to avoid demand putting pressure on prices. And as many political groups offer promises on housing, there hasn't been much movement in supply under the current government. Even considering social housing, there has been a big decline since 2008, and with a Conservative austerity package, and therefore both social from the government and private incentivised by the government, is needed. However, the Conservative Party have announced the go-ahead of the high-speed rail network, which aims to reduce commute times to London and the regions I considered earlier with Yorkshire and the Midlands are on this route. I've included a link to a video specifically focusing on the HS regarding infrastructure improvements to also boost mobility of labour. So if you follow the link, you'll find this video, and it just shows how infrastructure can be used as a supply-side policy and, I suppose, improve the geographical mobility of labour, which should then therefore help structural unemployment. The second immobility, which is occupational. Now, this refers to a shifting of demand for skilled labour. So, for example, since the 1980s, there's been a demand in skill related to the tertiary sector. So when we consider the deindustrialisation under Thatcher in the previous structural unemployment video I made, we can see that those who had less transferable skills found it hard to acquire work, as perhaps they were too maybe specialised towards mining. Now, you might not be able to see the picture of the graph, but I'm just going to kind of tell you what it's about. Deloitte found that certain industries are at high risk of being replaced by automation. So, for example, retail. Yet other industries such as education, social work, information and communications were less at risk. So therefore, perhaps the government needs to encourage greater training towards industries which are at less risk and try to move students and others away from industries which are at threat. Unfortunately, there are many low-skilled jobs which are at risk, and these lower-skilled are likely not to possess the transferable skills required. It is therefore really important to start from an early age in preparing students for future careers with careful consideration and greater advice from their schools, their colleges and their universities. Again, I don't expect you to be able to read this. It's just a study that was from Deloitte again, and it looks at David Doherty, who's the CEO of National Centres for Universities and Businesses, and he believed that universities and private industries have to work closer together to guide people in the right career path to avoid structural unemployment from taking place. He states it is crucial for those leaving education understand employees' changing expectations and are equipped to meet them. So what they've done together is they've worked at launching apps and platforms to equip UK graduates with the agility and the transferable skills that are needed. However, we can't just focus on students. So as a structural unemployment are not going to be the students at this current time. So one of the biggest problems is demographics of the structurally unemployed, often the older generation, who suddenly find themselves out of a job, have a fear of that change, and do not believe that they can transition. So that causes big issues. Therefore, assistance is required. Again, I don't be able to read this, but it's from the same Deloitte study, and it's looking at Amanda McKenzie, who's the CEO for business in the community, and she works with older people in training them with technology to help that transition. So therefore, social enterprises can help create a culture of lifelong training, which can help reduce structural unemployment by enabling older people to find work easier because they've got the skills that are required. Now, I've also made a video of education as a supply side policy. So again, you can find links, and this considers UK policy as well as other countries, which can use education as a way of reducing structural unemployment, and also can help to prevent structural unemployment from taking place.